Hello, everyone. Yeah, well, thank you for tuning in to Channel BK. Obviously, you know, I'm one of two co-hosts of the
You're
show.
not Channel BK. You're impersonating me.
Yes, but yeah, I'm one half of the hosting team behind What's on Repeat, the channel where we look at singles we've been into, albums we've been into, and concerts we may have been to, and also artists that we potentially haven't heard from in a little while that we want new music from.
That was wonderful. That was awesome.
Yeah, I
You
was
did
like,
great. You did great. Yeah, like Josh said, this is the end of the year. This is crazy. We made it through another crazy year. Obviously, this video will be out hopefully early enough to where Josh and I will be able to kind of rest. I have my lists coming together. He'll probably have his list coming together. So if you guys want to watch those, they'll probably be out a little bit after this video. I also already told Josh I'm locking in this list because a lot of the artists, I've been changing it every couple days because every new artist has been putting out something, singles, blah, blah, blah. So I'm over it. There's a bunch of artists that are coming out with songs in the next few weeks. I'm like, I'm over it. I'm shooting war, whatever, how you want to pronounce it. I'm shooting it finally. I'm over it. We're getting into it. So I'm out of the bullshit. So but yeah, so we are actually going to do it a little differently this time. We have two albums that we share in common. So I'm going to just say my two. He'll say his two. We'll go into the two that we share, and then the show will go on like normal. So I think this is a very obvious album. I kind of am in the opinion of the hype people and the people that kind of don't see the hype. And that is An Evening with Silk Sonic by Silk Sonic. I'll be honest, I really don't have that much different to say from other people other than I didn't go into the album expecting this crazy revolutionary thing. Like
me
I
neither.
think, yeah, and I think whether if you wanted it to be that, I'm not going to be mad at you. I don't feel like how you can listen to those three singles, which I think they got better every single time. I don't know how you can listen to those and be like, oh, they're changed. It's like, no, I think what they did so brilliantly, in my opinion, is they modernized a sound that was so popular. They did it in a fun, creative way. And then I think what stands out on this album is the writing and the performances. I don't think it's about
Oh,
the sonics. I like the songwriting on all three of those singles, I think, is some of the best like pop, soul, R&B writing of this year. Like it's incredible, and their chemistry is great. It's not
yeah.
revolutionary, but it doesn't have to be. It's a tribute, in my opinion, and I like it for that. It's a short, sweet album. I think it's slick and it just rides and it's a lot of fun and all the funny jokes, especially Smoking Out the Window, which that music video had me dead. That music video is my
Yeah,
favorite
and
video of the year.
also in terms of the lyrics on that one, I totally see why Anthony called it a like retro soul equivalent of a future song in a way with its lyrics, like, yeah, and all the like Chuck E. Cheese references and everything. Yeah.
24 Karat Magic was probably my first real, like, I really like this. I never thought it was amazing, but I'm like, okay, I'm with Bruno now because I think that album was a lot of fun. But yeah, this album's fun and it's really great, and I think the writing on it is great. So again, there's really not that much that needs to be said. And then my final album, because of how we're doing it, is the new Remy Wolf album, the debut Remy Wolf album, Juno. I didn't really know that much about her. You brought her up. I saw Anthony's
Yes.
review about. So really, it was mostly you. You could take the credit for it. But I saw you. You're like, all right, yeah, I got you in the Remy Wolf. But you mentioned her to me. I know Anthony did an interview with her, but I'm not gonna front. Like she's my new thing. I love her.
Yes.
I've been addicted to her. Like I low key have like a crush on her. So like she's great. I love just
Yeah.
she has such a great mix of like pop and like hip hop and like fun singer songwriter stuff. And it has just this infectious flair. And I think, again, to the Silk Sonic record, my favorite part of this record is she has songwriting chops that are very like honest and like to the point. But then it reminds me of like Pup, who we're going to get into later, where they have these like self-degrading lyrics and this kind of cathartic moments and these kind of
Oh,
smart
yeah.
ass moments that come across in this album too. And thank you,
Oh, yeah,
Josh, for bringing
absolutely.
her up. So yeah, so those are my two that I kind of made him mad because, well, not mad, but that's why he didn't end up picking her. So we didn't have three records we shared. He picked another artist. But those are my two before we get into our combo. So Joshua, what are your two?
So my two, I'm gonna start things off with an album that I'd say, spoiler alert, out of all the albums that we have on the docket today, this is probably the biggest outlier. It's the one that I know Brian hasn't listened to. Uh, and yeah, it's a hip hop album, and the album is Half God by Wiki. It was his 2019 solo album Oofy that got me on the train. I really like that album. It was one that kind of fell under the radar. Anthony wasn't super crazy about it. He talked about it in a YONO review a couple of years ago, but I thought that record, what really impressed me about that thing was just his, it's sort of like what we were saying about, the other artists we've talked about so far. Just the writing is just, he's really good at writing lyrics that are just so heartfelt and honest. Like, he's the kind of artist that you kind of, as you listen to him talk about his mental health and stuff like that, you kind of understand him when you listen to him. And I was kind of emotionally moved by what he was doing on there. Obviously, there were great braggadocious banger kind of tracks, and I also thought some of the beat choices on that album were really kind of cool and sort of creative. I think I like that album a little bit more than this record. And I'm not saying I don't like this album either. Like, there, because I do really like this album as well, and I totally get why Anthony liked this album better. And this one actually has done pretty well critically compared to his last record. Which, yeah, it is great to see Wiki finally kind of getting that deserved praise, I think. Um, and and like, I definitely think what sort of makes this album different from his last is that I was shocked at just how kind of direct and like in your face it is with, the lyrics. It's definitely a more low key, somewhat more introspective album. It definitely allows Wiki's lyrics to really shine through that much more. Like, I really like the way how he reflects on where he's from, New York, and also how it's impacted him and how it played a role in like very important moments in his life. You look at a song like Roof, for example, which is a really good song, The Business or Drug Supplier, which is another one that's kind of this very haunting, kind of ballad like rap song. If you're new to Wiki, maybe I think Oofy may not be a bad place to start because it is definitely a more immediate album. Whereas, and I could listen to it anytime. Whereas this record, I kind of have to be in the mood for it because it is so like personal, and it is like one that demands you to hang on every word. And yeah, I really dug that record. Great to see him. Yeah, it's still killing it. So my next record, however, is one that I know Brian also is a big fan of, and this is kind of an interesting one. It's one that he was excited for, and it lived up to expectations and pleasantly surprised me, which is kind of proof of sort of the kind of different points of view we've had on this artist. The album is Valentine by Snail Mail, aka Lindsay Jordan, which, by the way, Lindsay, please get well soon. Because yeah, it's too bad that, given what an incredible singer you are, that you had a little issue with your vocal cords and need surgery. And yeah, sorry you've had to postpone an entire tour you had set up. But anyway, so Brian I kind of already alluded to this a little bit in our last episode. Snail Mail's debut, I definitely understand why a lot of people, including my co-host, were really into that one. Um, Personally, Lindsay definitely showed potential as a singer-songwriter on the thing, but I did not get the hype. Like, I thought that it was just kind of a very flat, somewhat middling kind of vanilla sort of render brand of indie rock, which is fine, but it was one of those projects that to me just kind of was in one ear out the other. Over time, I have kind of looking back at it and sort of seeing some of the other indie stars that have come up. When I saw plenty of people on the internet saying, that record was really kind of underrated at the time of release, I was like, okay, I kind of get why people are into this. Uh, and and then leading up to this album, I heard some of the singles and I was like, cool, these are pretty good. They definitely show a bit of improvement, some growth from this debut album. I and it did take its time to really like click with me, but I can honestly say that I get the hype. I get the snail mail hype now. I think this is a great album. Just the I love the perspective she shows on like relationships and young love. It's definitely a more mature, more fleshed out album than the first record.
You brought up a lot of really good points because I think with her debut, what cracks me up the most is as much as I love it, and because here's the thing, again, it goes back to the Silk Sonic thing. Nothing on that first record is like groundbreaking. I just really love it, and I don't know why it connected with me so much because listening to that record in hindsight, it does feel like Clario's new album. I'm not gonna lie, like even though I did like it, it was a little sleepy and boring to me. But it's odd because I can understand that with her debut now listening to this because her debut is very, I mean, there's like Pristine has some drive to it, but that first album kind of just sort of, yeah, and then we get to Heat Wave, and it's very just kind of there. This album is a lot more subtle. She does a lot more little subtle things. There is more punchiness to it. I think, like you were saying, you brought up a lot of really good things about her maturing as a songwriter. Instrumentally, I think there's a lot more interesting choices. I think the first record kind of had this one consistent mood and feel to it. Even though I really like that record, it's strange to me. I don't know if it's her vocals that get me so much because I think I think as a songwriter, that's where she shines. I think as a performer, she kind of falls to the background. I think like Snail Mail, Lucy Dacus, Phoebe Bridgers. I think obviously there's stuff about them that I like more than just, them as people and vocalists. But I think vocally, those kind of ladies get me more like I get more punch out of them. Even when Snail Mail's making very kind of light, fluffy stuff, her vocals are very raw, and
Oh yeah,
get a
I agree with you. I wrote down here that her voice just kind of grabs me immediately, like on the title track, where I mean on the verses, she's kind of introspective, just sort of there. I really like the synth tones
mhm.
and like the do 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 those twangy guitar lines. And then there's that chorus, which is just explosive, and she just like it's such a cathartic moment on the record. And I think it is an excellent way to kick off the record. I mean, it is with, I think, whether you love this album or just kind of think it's okay, you can't deny that that is the best song on the album. And I think the thing I've realized that I didn't really see on her debut, and I see it like even more so here, is just um I think it's really her relatability. This is one of those albums where, I mean, she's about my age, oddly enough. So it makes it easier for me to understand her more. Whereas I could listen to Phoebe Bridgers or something like that, and I could be like, there's not much I can say, not much I could tell you about what you've been through, but I understand you've had some trauma in your life and stuff like that. And I do really like the more expansive sound. There's more synths, and I think the strings on some songs are really beautiful. And also, like the bass mixing is significantly thicker. Like Ben Franklin has maybe one of the loudest bass mixes in a Snail Mail song, and yet it kind of works.
Yeah,
And
that song it kind of is clunky, but in a good way. Like it has this like chunky kind, like even with her vocals, like her vocals are swooning, but that whole song is like it sounds dirty and like very just gross, and it's like like it's just kind of like, and then just like oh honey, like her vocal swooning, but it's just such a gross sounding song.
oh yeah, and it actually kind of sounds like the R&B equivalent to like a Sleater Kinney song. I mean, that riff sounds like something you probably hear on maybe The Woods or something like that. Just, yeah, it's dirty, but like, and speaking of which, I actually bought the album on vinyl as well.
Hold on, hold on. This is a moment. This is a moment. Hold on. Record. Here we go. Let's do it for the video. Hey!
Madison by Sloppy Jane.
There you go.
So kind of how I first learned about Sloppy Jane is, yeah, I'm gonna bring up Phoebe Bridgers again. This
So
is
she signed to her label, right?
yes, she signed to her Satisfactory record label, which she started that at the end of last year, and she's got a few different artists on there, and Sloppy Jane being one of them. It's this very lush, kind of cinematic, and just very like sort of luscious chamber pop. Like there's a lot of strings and horns and like glockenspiel and harp. Like she pulls out all the stops on this thing, and yeah, it's like that. But on top of all that, she recorded this album in a friggin' cave in West Virginia, and
That's
so
some
that's
indie
why
shit
you
right
see
there.
that's why that's why you see on the album cover she's in a cave in front of the piano and she's holding up a toy horse, something like that. And yeah, so the whole concept behind this album is just it's the kind of thing I could describe it to friends and being like, "Are you on something?" But what's even wilder is it pans out so well. I like Brian, I am gonna go out on a limb and say this may be my favorite chamber pop album of 2020 so far. It is a very well produced, very like impeccably arranged kind of record. Like, yeah, that opening overture that opens the record immediately, you're just kind of there. Yeah, it's like you kind of don't really know where it's gonna go. It's like at some points it's just very lovely and stuff, but then like near the end it gets all creepy and sort of like, yeah, like it's sort of like it's like a horror movie score, and just like how it just sounds so like, and like the climax, the burr, 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 burr.
With chamber pop, I think a lot of the time with me, there's certain kinds of music where, like you were saying earlier, you were saying there has to be a mood, right? And with me, there are certain moods sometimes where I'll be exhausted, I'll have a headache. And honestly, I'd rather listen to something that actually keeps my attention. So, like in that moment, I'll listen. Like if I'm catching up with music, like I'll listen to, like lately, I'd listen to the new Little Sims record because it took me forever. Which, by the way, it's a great album. So like those are the kind of albums I need to listen to. So maybe it was just the fact that I got to this album at the right moment because I wasn't really feeling terrible. Like I felt fine. And this album is, I think when patience is done right, I can recognize it because there's times where I've listened to artists like her, I played through it, and the first thing I said is, clearly there's a lot to this that is above my, like over my head, but I don't like this shit. But this record, I think, like I was messaging you while listening to it, it was oddly, there was these moments on the record that were so precise where I feel like the moment I felt like I was gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna fall asleep because this isn't my thing, something would be introduced. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I'd be sitting there and I'm like, this is very mature sounding. And then I'd be like,
Oh yeah.
okay, I'm kind of, I think I want to go to sleep. And then like something would happen and I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's like, I'm like, it always kept me interested. Like again, to the whole snail mail thing, there's subtleties, there's little things here and there. And I think even though this is not my kind of music, like it's not music I can just keep going back to, when I recognize that it's good and it's something I'm interested in, I can recognize it. And I really liked it. And like you were saying, I go on Google Images, I'm like, okay, I had an idea of what the music was going to be. The album starts and I'm like, hold up, hold up. This is a joke, right? Like this is a joke. Like this is the same, like, cuz it was like when I saw say her name,
Haley Doll.
Lingua Ignota.
Lingua Ignota.
It was the same thing. I'm like looking at pictures of her and I'm going, "Oh, okay." And the moment I heard that album, I'm like, "Uh, uh, I wasn't expecting this." So
Yeah.
it's a very lovely surprise. I didn't want to go into this album being like, okay, I think I get what this is. It was nice that it was, I could appreciate it. Like again, like Wise Blood, for example. Even though I don't go back to that record all the time, I was able to go, you know what? I can see why people love this. It's not totally for me, but I like this more than stuff like this in a way.
Oh yeah, and also speaking of lingua ignota and stuff like that, like Kristen, she has such a wide range, and
Yeah.
just the way she writes songs, I think is really interesting. Like there's little motifs throughout. Like you'll hear lots of stuff in here about death or like policemen, and like toy horses being. I think the way she's sort of, I think, using that either as a metaphor, or it's sort of like some sort of thing that you like hold on to like keep you safe from maybe harm, or protecting yourself from your past trauma maybe, because there's clearly a lot of lyrics like that on there. And also in terms of her range, she can go from, yeah, singing like something like I pledge allegiance to Jesus. Like it's just, it's so like in that range. But then other points like on that Bianca song, which took its time to really like work for me, is like she's just like woo, just like hitting those really operatic tones. And yeah, it's kind of, yeah, and I agree with you. I really like how kind of meticulous a lot of the little elements are. Like at the end of the title track, for example, there's a thing where there's this and then like what sounds like a bunch of people going shh, something like that. And then like it ends with the the lead melody of a song on a piano. And it's a 6-minute song, and it's kind of like a little like, yeah, it's sort of like a symphony in a way. Some of these songs are structured. I'm definitely glad that it's not just me singing its praises. Like honestly, after I saw Fantano review it so positively, I'm like, great, I can sleep. Like, I'm not the only one on board here. Like, awesome. Like, yeah, yeah, I could go on and on about this, honestly.
No, it's a great album. I completely agree. Hey, you know what? The fact that we share that on like this next record is awesome.
And I was shocked you enjoyed it as much as you did. I remember hearing this like, oh, I'm a little worried how Brian would feel about it. But then I saw your message and I'm like,
Again, I'm
hey.
telling you right now, like my genuine opinion on it is the moment it started, I'm telling you, the first thing I thought was, I'm not gonna like this, because I'm like, I think this is gonna be boring to me. But I think she does, like you said, I think the way she constructed all these songs with everything she's using, because of how diverse she is, it does keep my interest. Where again, it was that perfect record where she had one thing going. The moment I was like, okay, I'm kind of losing interest, she would come with something else, and I'd be like, wow. And like again, I don't want to be honest, like even though it is what's on repeat, I do really like this record, and I don't think it's a big repeat record for me, which is going against the title of the show, but I don't think that means it's because it's bad. It's just one of those records that when it's over, I'm kind of like, I need a break. Like, I'm like, I need a little bit of time to let it sink in, because I would totally listen to it again. It's just, it's not a re-listenable album to me, because it's one of those, there's a lot
Oh
that you
yeah,
process.
totally the opposite of me. I had this shit on repeat all November.
Well, I will say,
Like, God help me.
if there is a great transition to our other shared record, is
Yeah.
LP. It's how it's, you guys know, it's how it is.
LP.
J-Peg, Mafia, Buttermilk Jesus,
Yes.
Peggy, where you been at? Okay?
Yeah,
So,
baby.
I did not listen to the online version. I listened to Joshua's request. I saw Anthony. I heard everyone on the internet talk about it. I heard, Peggy himself. I only listened to the offline version. So this is my opinion on the offline version. I think a lot of what he does I love, but I can see the complaints of, like, I think there are times where I don't think it's him being too weird, because ironically, I think his last record, All My Heroes Are Cornballs, I like that more than Veteran, because I think
I agree.
because I think there was a lot more interesting ideas to that, whereas I think Veteran was definitely, it wasn't a one-note album, but it kind of was like, okay, I can kind of see what this is. Whereas All My Heroes Are Cornballs, I think, did a lot more deeper dives into weird shit. But I do agree. I think certain words are hard. Certain song structures of his kind of annoy me. This record, though, I didn't notice that as much. He does a really good job on here being like, the first half of this record are like all the really short songs. So you get through them. And then the second half is a lot more of the longer stuff. This record doesn't feel like his other records where you're kind of, the first song is like a 4-minute normal song, and then like the next one is like 30 seconds of him going, and then the next song is him like auto-tune singing, and it goes to some, and you're kind of like, what? Like, this is his most kind of consistent record in that. And Hazard Duty Pay, that shit is one of the most banging songs of the year. And the music video is fucking stupid as fuck, but it's so good. And like, I love that song. That is the pinnacle of why I love him. Is he's so weird, experimental. He can do so many different things, but he's so witty, he's so confident, and he just doesn't give a fuck. And that's what I love about that song. That song is like a perfect amalgamation of who he is. That alone is the reason why the offline version is like leagues ahead of the online version. That song in general is the prime reason. That song, there's other songs. And I know people, oh, you're talking about that song. No, there's great songs on here. I think the features are really good. I think the way he ends the album is really great.
Oh yeah, that Untitled. That's Untitled. That's another song that's not on the online version.
No.
And I think it's like, it's the perfect ending for the album. I mean, I'd say maybe the only thing I'd change about, and I agree with everything you said, by the way, about this record. Like, I think it's his best album. It's definitely some of his most insane ideas and stuff like that yet. And I just think he's gotten better as a rapper. And I will say, in terms of the sequencing on the offline version, maybe the only thing I would change is maybe put Damn 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 somewhere in the middle, which it is somewhere in the middle on the online versions. In terms of production ideas, there's all kinds of crazy shit on here, like end credits, that big rock sample over top of him rapping is just like, oh my god, just banger. Yeah. And then something like I'd say some of his like most sort of in your face bangers are on this record, like Rebound, or some of the interludes. Like there's the song Nice, which doesn't even have him rapping, but instead it's just that big trap beat with the pull me up, like it, and it's just, yeah, it hits so hard. And the song BMT, it's kind of like what we were saying about that song off the Snail Mail record. That song sounds gross. Like that beat, it sounds so squishy. It's like yeah, and then just like the xylophones and like ay ya ya ay ya ya ya, and then like that beat is just like he mixed that bass and that beat so loud on that song, and like how does that? It's a weird combination, and yet it works so well. And then immediately it's followed by like some of the more reflective songs on there, like Ghost of Ranking Dread. Like I love the Decay Maids feature on that song, heavenly, beautiful. And also just like, I really like how introspective he gets on that song. I think it's his best album and easily the best hip hop album I think I've heard this year. So yes, I love it.
It's pretty damn great. Pretty damn great. Just like some singles that we've been hearing, and I've already complained about this at the beginning of the video, that I just had to lock in my singles because there's too many coming out, and I'm like, screw all of you.
So the first single, I'm keeping it in banger territory once again. Waiting by Pup. Pup just is in my opinion, I will say this, as far as like the current like ilk of pop punk bands right now, Pup are easily one of my favorites. It's like what we were saying about a lot of the other bands. Like, I don't think anything they're doing is like groundbreaking, but I think that the fact that they've managed to make slow but very sure progressions with each and every album, like their debut, it's a kind of basic pop punk album, sort of in one ear out the other. Then their sophomore album, I think, showed some better songwriting. And then Morbid Stuff, their latest record, is absolutely stunning. Like it may even be the best pop punk album of the year. I mean of the decade. Sorry, but yeah, that record, they definitely did different things with that one too. Little subtle things like a song like Full Blown Meltdown. That song, yet another song that just sounds so nasty, so dirty. It's just distorted as all hell. And I would definitely say the same for this song too. It's probably their heaviest since that one song. I remember seeing that they had new singles and that they announced a tour. They're like, awesome, they're back. I turn this on. I hear that riff, just like the and then like Stefan is just like, I know it's a problem. Your face is glued to the back of my eyelids. And the fact that they mixed this just like kind of volatile vibe with like one of their catchiest hooks, like the waiting for you. Like it's just sort of a testament to what this band does so well. They have a lot of energy and they clearly encourage a mosh pit. And yet they're writing just such fantastic melodies and just like, yeah, they have these little guitar parts that'll just get stuck in your head. And I think the solo on the song is pretty insane too. It kicks ass. All right, moving on to my second single, where we're gonna, cool things down. We're gonna, get a little more chill with this next single. And this is one that I did not know had come out until Fantano mentioned it in his weekly track roundup. And I thought, oh, I remember this artist. I caught her last record. I'll check it out. And little did I know it would become one of my most listened to songs of the past week or so. That is Stabilize by Nullifer Yanya, an artist that is from the UK. I originally caught her last record, Miss Universe, which came out in 2019. I will say this, I didn't love that album. I was kind of on the fence with it, honestly. I did think, as far as like maybe, it is an album that is indeed very creative and kind of interesting, but also at points, especially during those weird interludes, it's kind of sleepy and it can get a little boring sometimes. However, I think Nullifer definitely showed potential on that thing, as far as like her voice immediately very much stood out to me. It's just yeah, I don't really know how to describe it. It's the kind of thing where you kind of have to just listen to it for yourself. Like it's the sort of thing where it's anthemic and it's beautiful, and her voice is just like so kind of off, but in like all the right ways. I put it on. I hear those crisp drums, then I hear that riff in her vocals, and it just sounds so smooth and so trippy. And it has just this fantastic groove to it. I'm like, wow, this is some next level shit right here. Yeah, and I just like I was saying, I think she has a very unique voice. It's like on the song, like on the verses, she's not quite singing, not quite speaking. I mean, she's not doing a whole speak singing thing. Her delivery is just, yeah, it's so like concise and just like that hook that, and if I'm going to stabilize, it's just like, yeah, it's so catchy. It gets stuck in my head. It's kind of this twangy indie rock, or say post punk, you would maybe call it, and it's got kind of the soulful element to it. Like I told Brian this before, it reminds me a lot of what Leanne LaHavas has been doing lately. Just like it's where it's like very concise, very dense. The riff is very catchy and has a good groove to it, and then like the vocals on top of it are just like, yeah, they immediately pull you in. And she does have a new record coming out. It's called Painless. It drops early March. And on this single alone, I'm definitely, it is one of my most anticipated albums of the year.
Very good. You were saying we're gonna go to more like chill music. Both of my singles are very much in that vein as well. I don't have anything crazy big.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I was putting in this. I had Rosalia at one point. I had the new Beach Bunny, Oxygen was great. I'm trying to think of who I had originally when I actually sent you my list.
Well, I remember you had Dashboard Confessional and Block Party.
Oh, yes, the Block Party single. That one was good. I ended up putting in a different one this time around just because it just kind of spiced things up. But yes, I'm going to talk about the new Dashboard Confessional. Here's to Moving On. I think a lot of people hear the name of that band and you know, you have one or two opinions. This is like OG like 2000s pop punk in that kind of era with that sound. It's acoustic and I think vocally it's great. I think this is one of those, like, that was my favorite song off his last record, Heartbeat Here, or Hearts Beat Here. I don't know the title. It's just an acoustic song and it's beautiful and it's minimal and the vocals are great. Same thing here. Their record's coming out in February, so I'm hoping that it's a lot more doing the things we know how to do versus trying to jump on weird modern trends or like do things that are too poppy. Like, do what you do best. Like, even though people may not like them, at least what they do is fine. Just don't try and be like, don't. But that's why I love this record. Now, an artist, my follow-up artist, this new single is one of the weirdest conundrums because this is kind of in the wheelhouse of experimental, but it kind of goes back to how he used to rap, which is kind of how he hasn't been the past couple projects. And it's the new Earl Sweatshirt 2010. First off, Black Noise. Jesus Christ, this beat. This beat is so fucking great. This song is like old Earl rapping on like new Earl beats. It's so bubbly, upbeat, catchy, but just every line, you know, 5-0 coming after me like the Olympics.
Oh man.
Like shit
I
like
have not
that.
heard that song, but I hear that line. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna listen to this.
But that's why I ended up picking it, because I think like kind of last minute, it was the song that I actually was putting on repeat, because just that boom, 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 like it's just so bubbly but dark and experimental at the same time. Great track. But yeah, Earl, hopefully you're good. You know, we want to see you make it out, and I'm excited. Like you were saying, hopefully this leads to an album. So super excited. Joshua wanted to talk about anticipated artists this time around, mainly because I know he didn't go to any concerts, but your boy did. Boy went to 2. So I'm gonna get those out of the way real quick. Josh can kind of comment on them. On October 15th, I made the day trip, which felt like garbage the day after. Not total garbage, but it was exhausting after, to go see Injury Reserve in Chicago. at the Lincoln Hall. The opener was this guy named Zero, and he makes like electronic music, and it wasn't my thing, but he seemed like a cool guy, and it was an interesting opening. Now to Injury Reserve. First off, I want to say their newest album, even though I have my comments on it, the more I think about it, the more I'm actually like, I think this is one of my favorite records of the year because I just keep going back to it and keep thinking about it. This tour was very interesting. They obviously, with everything with Grogs, all they did is they did the entire album front to back. The new album they did front to back. They had the album cover on the wall, like just the red, and the opening was incredible. So Richie was behind it, and you could just see his silhouette, and he was rapping outside, in that kind of frantic way that he does, and then just a boo, 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 and the lights were going crazy. And then when it transitioned into Superman and we're all like singing that shit to him.
Now I got that. Now I got the riff stuck in my head.
Yeah, and it just kept going. And then when it got to Knees and it got to Groggs' verse, literally Richie and Parker both left the stage, and the stage was empty during his verse. And I swear, dude, for that minute or two, I almost bawled my eyes out. I'm like, this shit is depressing. It was very hard. And then after they were done with the album, they did like Jailbreak the Tesla. They did Oh Shit. They did
some bangers you're listing out there.
Yeah. Best spot at the house part. What is that
song? Best spot in the house.
Best spot in the house. They did that, and then I think they did one other song. So like, I wasn't really upset, and I was very lucky to see them before Groggs passed. But it was interesting that was kind of the way they went, just doing that album full out. Great to see them again, and like I said, hopefully, I'm hoping because I think in that Fantano interview, it sounds like there's another album. Like it sounds like it. I don't know if like Groggs is on it, but it sounded like they were already we're already working on another album. So I don't know what that's gonna be. So we'll see. And then the other artist I saw was a artist I love. I saw him before Ryan Key a few years ago, and he's sort of like a singer-songwriter, kind of pop punk artist a little bit. His name is Corey Wells. I saw him on November 7th at the Sanctuary in Hamtramck, which was the first time I've ever been there, so that was exciting. And Broadside, which is a kind of another pop punk band. Again, not in the Pup Jeff Rosenstock camp. They're more of kind of that semi kind of Warped Tour style. It was an acoustic set. They were really good. I've known of them for a while. There was a local opener, which I wish I remember his name so badly, but he was really nice and cool. I love Corey Wells. I love his voice. I love the way he kind of reminds me of Chester Bennington a bit, where he has like this
R.I.P. Chester.
R.I.P. Chester, rest in peace to the man. He has such violence in his voice and just anger, but he has such a beautiful voice too, and I think that's why Chester was such a great vocalist, is he was able to just be like and like sing.
Yeah. You're sort of reminding me of somebody like Lingua Ignota. Like,
yes,
he could be like, "Do you want to be?" or just like mortified.
Yeah, I really liked his lyrics and his songwriting ability. I got to talk to him a bit after the show. He's such a sweet guy. He is so cool. He released a single a few days ago too, so that's another me letting you know he put out a new single. But he was really good. I really liked him. It was such a nice small show, and I just love him as a performer. I told him this straight up, and I wanted him to know, like, some of his songs have like a band on them, but I told him the fact that you could still perform some of those songs like by yourself acoustically and still make it seem powerful like a full band's playing it, I think that's impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, those are my two concerts. Again, they were nothing too bad. I came to the realization that I had two shows in March next year that I'm gonna have to sell tickets to one because for whatever reason, Brockhampton and Touche Amore needed to come to Detroit on the same fucking night. I hate everything. So, anyways, sorry,
Oh yeah, well
Brockhampton. I've
yeah,
already seen you twice. I need to see Touche Amore perform. My favorite album of 2020. So I love you boys, but
yeah.
that's the troubles. But speaking of 2022, we're there. We're basically there at this point, and it's crazy. We both have artists that like we want to, we just want to talk about, we just want to bring up
Yeah.
that we think we're excited about. I'm excited about his artist. I don't know about mine. I don't know if he's excited about mine, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. Japan Droids, kind of in line with a lot of what we were saying. They literally just make upfront hoorah rock, kind of pop punk alternative rock. Celebration Rock is going to be celebrating its 10th anniversary, so they're actually performing it in full at some festivals. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, Japan Droids, I'll bring them up because they definitely have a style of, again, nothing that they do is overly complicated but they just make hoorah music. Like Celebration Rock, I love. I think that album's awesome. The latest record I thought was pretty good, but it definitely had some stuff that I was like, I wasn't so sure. But their live album that came out, Massey fucking Hall, which came out last year, I thought was great. They only come out every few years, and their albums are very short. They kind of keep it to like 35 minutes, 8 songs. I need more of them, and I really hope that they release. I mean, obviously, as we've talked about for the last year or two, all the artists we've always anticipated, most of them, I think, at this point, still haven't come out with a record. Like, I know we brought up a bunch of people, so at this point, we're kind of like just thinking of new people, but I really like them. I think they're a lot of fun, and I need music like that. I need another album of that. I need to see where they go next. But I know you're always excited about this artist.
Oh yeah,
I transition. Hey.
Yeah, transition into always, or I've heard them pronounce always because like they have 2 V's instead of a W.
Again, we're changing it up. Japan Droids is they're screaming in your face, being like, "You gotta live your best life," and then always is just making that dream pop.
Yeah, it's like Canadian indie band that plays this very sort of all hail Canadian bands. Anyway, but yeah, they play this kind of twee, jangly sort of like power pop, and I will say power pop is a kind of subgenre of rock music that I do like it. It can be a little hit or miss sometimes. Like Brian may have seen, I posted to my Instagram story like my Spotify Wrapped, and you may have seen like I had on there Jay Dilla, Brockhampton, Tyler, Genesis Wusu, and then like number 4 is Bare Naked Ladies, which that's a band that plays that sort of style of music that I do really mess with. It's a kind of genre of music where I really like it, but I can only really name a few bands I know that like I think do it and do it really well. And Always are definitely in that camp. I mean, obviously they're not like a Bare Naked Ladies or a Fountains of Wayne or anything, but I just love, they put out a fantastic album in 2017 that sure did get a lot of hype, and yet I think it was the one indie album that year that definitely, lived up to all that hype for sure. It was sort of like Japan Droids. It was a very short, just like 32 minutes, 10 songs, and it had just really good songwriting on it and had some great melodies. I really like how they managed to balance out being really pretty with Dreams Tonight, but then like there's a song like Plimsoll Punks, which is like it's catchy, but it's also just like so distorted and like it's still just kind of like rocks. And I love some of the more introspective moments on it, like Not My Baby or the last song, Forget About Life. But for whatever friggin' reason, we have not heard from this band since that album.
When
like,
you brought them up, when I saw your email, the first thing I said is, holy shit, that is so true. I've literally forgotten that it was 2017 when they put out that album. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's a good artist to bring up. Cause I thought the same thing. I really enjoyed that record. And, you know, I think that's again a genre where like it's not my favorite, but if it's done in a way that I'm interested in it, like they did, I'm like, no, this is good. This is a lot of fun. But the fact that it's gonna be 5 years if they put out an album next year.
Like,
So no,
what
that
the
is
fuck?
crazy.
Like, yeah, and it's like, I did see they did a few more things as that album. They did tour with the National in 2019, which yeah, it is kind of interesting they did considering they sound nothing like what the National does, which is this is very languid and kind of very moody, sort of like indie rock and kind of singer-songwriter stuff. Uh, that but yeah, like I'm still pretty sure they'll be back eventually. Like, I mean, I may not have heard anything, but like I wonder if maybe they've been writing songs like over the last few years, or
Maybe
maybe
the
they went
album's
to the
done.
studio.
Like you brought up Parquet Courts. Like maybe they've had an album done, but to them they're like, we're gonna need touring to like help us figure shit out. So maybe we'll
Oh
just
yeah, I'm
something
curious if they'll
here.
tour again.
Yeah.
That's another thing I wanted to point out. And yeah, and by the way, I know they put out one other album before Antisocialites, their debut. I've only heard a few songs off that. Like I've heard Archie Marry Me, and that's about all I can remember from that record at the moment. But yeah, I think they're the kind of band, and believe me, it was difficult. It was a real just like headache just to figure out another anticipated artist because I feel like a lot of people we've talked about have pretty much come through with new stuff. Uh, but then I had a few other ideas, but then I'm like, oh, the band that made Plimsoll Punks, Dreams Tonight, and Lollipop, hell yeah. I haven't heard from them in a while. They're the one.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of 2021. I don't know how we did that, but
Yeah,
now
like
we did it. We're good. I have to wait another year to fucking see My Chemical Romance live, so maybe I'll just never see them live. And who knows? Maybe I'll never. When we talk about anticipated artists, that's the one where I'm like, okay, so what does this mean? Are we getting another album? Are we just doing reunion tours? I need to know because if you are holding an album,
yeah,
from us,
actually, yeah.
find you, Gerard. Find you. But anywho, 2021. We made it. Thank you guys so much for getting through another year with us. Please check out all of the music that we recommended. And please get ready to check out our channels for our lists.
Oh yeah.
Be coming. I told Josh, I said I'm basically done with mine too. It's just a matter of kind of finishing a couple little details here and there. There are some stuff lately that I want to kind of get into finally. Joshua, thank you for getting me through another year. If you guys are watching this, there's some big things coming next year, and I always used to joke about that every year when I try to do something big, but there's a new journey that ChannelBK is going to be going through. So once the new year is up, I hope you guys come join me. It's going to be great.
Oh yeah.
This show is probably going to be changed up a little bit, but I'm going to be talking to Josh with that off camera. It's a secret. You guys can't know about it yet. So Joshua, anything to end out this year end? What's on repeat for the people?
Just check out Madison for yourself. Like, yeah, see what you think. Like, you may love it, you may hate it. I don't care. Just yeah. I that it's probably yeah that's the one album that I would most recommend you all check out.
Joshua just wants more people to be fans of that record, and if you're not a fan of it, he's gonna hate you. I'm just kidding. He just wants more people to talk to about it. He wants to be able to say more than us three.
Oh yeah,
me, you, and me. He needs. Let's get it to 5. Let's get 5. Okay.
Okay.
Well, good night, good morning, good evening, goodbye to everyone. That was the weirdest ending I've ever made. I don't know why.
Oh man.
Well, okay. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for watching.